Hey guys, hope you're doing well. In this video, we're going to be talking about Dread XP, or more specifically, the original Dread X collection. For those of you who don't know, it's a 10-game compilation from 10 different indie developers, and I'm going to go over my personal favorite games and talk about why I like them and why they make this collection well worth your time. My hope is that you'll seek it out and give it a try yourself. There's a lot of good stuff here. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Alright, Dread XP is a media and publishing company that focuses on the indie horror gaming community. They have championed indie developers from the beginning, and in turn have become an important part of the community itself. In May of 2020, they dropped their first published game. It's called the Dread X Collection. They chose 10 different developers and gave them 1 week to come up with something. 1 week to make their own playable teaser. So I guess you could say it was handled like a game jam. And it's pretty amazing the level of polish that we see here. I mean, granted, some entries do feel a little more finished than others, but again, they only had 7 days, so I think we can cut them some slack. Now, I'm not going to talk about all 10 games, and that's simply because I have my favorites, and you know how it is, it's more fun to talk about your favorites, right? Also, I'm not going to go in any particular order. This isn't a countdown or anything like that. So first, I want to start with Shatter by lovely Hellplace. In the ruins of future Britain, new gods rule the wastes. Shatter is what I would call a first-person exploratory adventure. It showcases old-school PSX-style graphics, and it's definitely one of my top favorites in this collection. The developer went on to create Dread Delusion, a fascinating retro RPG, which you can also find on Steam. And if you've played that, you'll recognize this has the same art style. It looks just like this. We play as a nameless protagonist in a dystopian cityscape filled with crumbling buildings, cryptic graffiti, and concrete wreckage. The first thing you notice is the sky is an eerie green color. Some kind of extinction event has occurred, and it's left this once thriving metropolis a shattered ruin. Maybe that's where they got the name from. And as we explore our surroundings, we discover townsfolk who offer us assistance or comment on the state of the world, or even offer to sell us items called neural implants. There's a bit of a cyberpunk aspect to the game's lore. Eventually, we come across a giant insectoid AI that controls what's left of the local government. It gives us an objective, to seek out what it calls a divine pupa in the wastes and return it. Get it? Pupa? Insect? The plot is very simple, and truth be told, there aren't a lot of game mechanics really. It's just a lot of walking and exploring, but that's okay, because what I love about this game is the odd and intriguing world that its developer has created. There's an ambience here that's a joy to experience, and a huge part of that is the soundtrack. It was composed by Daniel Staley, and it's some of my favorite video game music ever. He does an amazing job at matching the dystopian scenery with a haunting soundscape. It's really incredible. Are there any downsides or problems with the game? Well, like I mentioned before, the game mechanics are pretty minimal. We do have an inventory that we can access, items to find, enemies that we need to avoid, but we have no way to defend ourselves, no weapons or anything. But honestly, for me, it's satisfying enough just to explore the environment and read the notes we come across and speak to the NPCs. I do wish that we walked a little faster. There's quite a bit of ground to cover, and our stamina bar depletes very quickly, but overall, Shatter is one of the strongest entries here, and one of my top favorites. I think lovely Hellplace did an amazing job with this. The world they crafted is full of potential, and I'm curious if they'll revisit this idea one day. A luckless mage uses his knowledge of the dark arts to navigate a gloomy arcane realm, but something else seems amiss. Hand of Doom was created by Dook, and it's an obvious throwback to the computer RPGs of yesteryear. The interface itself resembles games like Might and Magic or The Bard's Tale. You have a large window that displays the environment ahead of you. There's a text window in the upper right for dialogue and item descriptions, as well as an action menu at the bottom for spell incantations. Now, there are like 5 or 6 spells in the game, and they all use the same 4 syllables, all in different arrangements or patterns or whatnot. The spell incantation aspect is the game's primary mechanic. And it's a pretty unique and clever concept that makes Hand of Doom the interesting experience that it is. We play as a wizard whose mission is to banish the spirit of our evil master to the nether realms. And in order to do so, we have to search for magical artifacts and ancient spells to add to our grimoire. It's actually pretty straightforward, the story, but walking around casting these spells by inputting the correct sequence of syllables is such a unique mechanic, it's like no other game you've ever played. And the sound design is equally impressive. This game features voice acting, not only from the other characters that you meet, but also your own voice when casting your magic. You speak in ominous, powerful tones, and it really adds to the immersion. Also, I wanted to mention the music. It sounds like 8-bit doom metal. It's very slow and has these big monolithic riffs that offer just the right amount of chiptune sludge. I don't know what else to call it. Anyway, it's kind of funny, but it's also awesome, and it fits perfectly. I really love what the developer was going for here. I'd say he was successful, and last I heard, he's finishing up a full release of Hand of Doom with presumably a more fleshed out story and a larger world to explore, so I'll definitely be checking that out when it arrives. Run around in your backyard picking toadstools and chasing monkeys in this LCD handheld game where nothing scary happens. Or does it? Summer Night was developed by Airdorf, and it is indeed designed to look as if you were playing one of those old Tiger Electronics handheld games from the 90s. At first, the gameplay is as simple as you might expect. The object seems to be plucking the mushrooms that appear briefly in your yard, and after you gather enough of them, you advance to the next stage. Easy peasy, right? Well, this lasts for a few rounds, and then other dynamics are introduced. There are monkeys that appear inexplicably and set poop traps for you to avoid. Some mushrooms turn out to be sentient enemies that can lower your health bar, and so on and so on. The game cleverly paces itself in revealing the new gameplay elements, and each stage grows more difficult as you advance. It's important to note, however, that you need to have a good set of headphones as you're playing because you slowly begin to realize that something else is happening around you, something meta, outside of the handheld game. It begins as an occasional sound, like a tapping at the window, and so you find yourself listening for more creepy noises and wondering what's causing them, yet you can't pause the handheld or get too distracted. After all, you're going for the high score, right? That's all I'll say about the plot, so to speak, because I don't want to give anything else away. You really should play the game yourself to discover what ends up happening. It's surprising, to say the least, but I'm amazed at the developer's ability to faithfully recreate the sights and sounds of an old LCD game. It's actually pretty astonishing, and the level of polish here is indicative of Airdorf's professionalism. That's why Summer Night is another top-tier addition to this collection. Winston thought he could use hell energy to create magical ponies. Winston was wrong. So The Pony Factory, by David Szymanski, is my other top favorite game in this collection. If you're not familiar with this developer, he created a very popular first-person shooter called Dusk. Dusk is a throwback to shooters from the 90s. It features low-poly graphics, a limited color palette, and a much bigger emphasis on movement and speed. It's absolutely incredible, and it really made a mark on the current FPS scene, namely boomer shooters. For the Dread X collection, he decided to take this formula, narrow it down even more, and present it as a horror game. What we get is a shooter with an extremely limited color palette. It's mostly black and white with the odd hint of color. And light and dark play an important role here. We're given a flashlight, but a primary mechanic of the game is we can't use our flashlight and our gun at the same time. What I mean is, it takes a nod from the old Doom 3 game. So you have to be very careful as you progress down the dark corridors in the game, constantly switching back and forth between the only two items you're given. What's the plot? What's the story? Well, the story exists in this game strictly to set up the gameplay, like most shooters, but from what I can make out, it seems a deranged lunatic has called upon hell itself to assist his reformatting of his town and its inhabitants. You see, he was unsatisfied with their so-called moral decay, so his plan was to somehow transform them into magical ponies that would be kind and gentle. Except the process was corrupted by hell, and now the factory is overrun by these demented monstrosities, and our character's mission is to put them down and end this unholy experiment. Kind of a bizarre plot, right? We're only given one weapon, but it's a good one. It's a rapid-fire bolt gun. with limited ammo. However, the game makes sure to leave extra ammo scattered around the levels. They're usually hidden in the corners of rooms or on top of shelves, what have you. The other resource we'll constantly be looking out for is medkits, and we'll need all we can find because the enemies really pack a punch and it only takes a few hits to kill us. There's no save feature, but you will start back at the beginning of the current level if you die. There's like 5 or 6 levels total, but when you get to the end, deep in the heart of the factory, you'll have to make your way back to the beginning. So there are a few things that I find fascinating about this game. First, I love the black and white color scheme. I love the stark contrast. Parts of it even have a chiaroscuro look that really heightens the tension when you're peeking around the corner looking for an enemy in the dark. The sound design is great too. It uses a theremin, which is not the most popular instrument to be heard in a video game, but I think it's there as a callback to old monster movies from the 1950s, old sci-fi stuff featuring mad scientists and creepy laboratories and experiments gone wrong. The game has several different modes: veteran for the hardcore players, casual for those who want an easier time, lights out mode where you don't have a flashlight, and Iron Horse mode for those who want an especially punishing experience. The ponies kill you in one hit. I'd say the Pony Factory is the true highlight of this collection. I can totally see this expanded upon with more weapon variety perhaps, or more levels, more enemies. It's such a neat idea for a horror shooter that if you like scary games and shooter games, you should definitely do yourself a favor and give this one a go. The horror comes from traversing the dark, claustrophobic corridors of the factory without knowing where the next enemy will pop up. And the shooting? I mean, David Szymanski knows a thing or two about gunplay, and his movement mechanics are butter smooth. And that's why this is probably my top favorite entry in this collection. As far as the other games included, I would give an honorable mention to... There's one called Outsiders by Mahelyk. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that name, but in Outsiders, we play as a nameless character. We've woken up in a mysterious house. We find cryptic messages scrawled on the walls. We're trying to put together what's going on, but meanwhile, there's a maniac running around outside and also a ghostly entity stalking us from room to room. It's a neat little mystery, and the ending is mind-blowing. You'll never be able to guess the outcome. And it even looks like they're making a full-length release, complete with multiplayer, so that's pretty exciting. Another honorable mention is Mr. Bucket Told Me To by Strange Scaffold. This is kind of a colorful, whimsical game. The story is very playful and comical even. We are a castaway, stranded on an island, and we have to utilize rubbish and found items to keep ourselves fed, watered, cleaned, and entertained during our exile. We even end up naming our tools, Mr. Bucket, Mr. Spear, Mr. Towel, in order to keep some semblance of sanity, really. But there's something else at work here, something that makes us question our sanity. I won't say anything else except I really loved the ending to this one. A very cool game. And there you have it. My rundown of all my favorite entries in this first Dread X collection. They made several more, and I want to try to make a video for the others. We'll see. But yeah, Dread XP did a remarkable job bringing these developers together to create a wonderful little compilation of indie horror games, and I highly recommend you picking this up. It's only like $7, so 10 games for $7, that's like 70 cents a game, and there's something here for everyone, I think. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.